It didn't happen during the argument, not in the middle of the betrayal, not when the words were sharp and the tension was loud. It happened afterward, in the quiet, when you were alone and, for the first time, you stopped defending them in your own mind. That was the shift. You replayed everything like you always do, searching for context, for nuance, for a way to make their actions make sense. You've always been the one who understands, the one who justifies, the one who stays. But this time, something in you refused to rewrite the story. You saw it clearly. No softening the truth. You would have done anything for them, protected them, chosen them, stayed loyal even when it cost you sleep, pride, and peace. And when you finally pulled your energy back, when you went quiet, that's what stunned you. Not anger, not revenge, just indifference. And now, whether they admit it or not, they can feel something changing. Your silence is different. Your presence is different, because this is where loyalty dies, not in anger, but in clarity. You weren't loyal because you were afraid to be alone. You were loyal because it's how you're built. When you choose someone, you don't do it halfway. You don't keep one foot out the door. You commit internally, quietly, completely. You stay when it's inconvenient. You protect when it's unpopular. You don't switch sides just because the energy in the room shifts. When you give your word, it means something. When you attach, it runs deep. That isn't weakness, that's structure. In a culture that treats connection like a temporary subscription, you were operating like a contract carved in stone. People detach at the first discomfort. They ghost instead of communicate. They replace instead of repair. Bonds have become surface level, optimized for convenience rather than meaning. And you never learned how to love like that. You feel everything. You notice shifts in tone. You sense distance before it's spoken. Your loyalty isn't blind. It's intense. It comes from depth. And not everyone is capable of that depth. That's why this hurt differently. Most people don't reach this level of emotional investment. They never risk that much of themselves. And most never survive losing it. But you did. You're still here. Still standing. Still capable of loyalty, even after seeing what it costs. That's rare. But here's the truth you had to learn the hard way. Depth without discernment becomes self-sacrifice. When loyalty has no filter, it turns inward. It starts defending people who haven't earned it. It starts protecting bonds that aren't protecting you. And that's where awareness begins to sharpen. Imbalance doesn't explode into your life. It seeps in quietly. At first, it feels small. You give a little more understanding because they are going through something. You offer patience because timing is off. You excuse the inconsistency because nobody's perfect. And you mean it. You're not pretending. You genuinely want to make it work. So you adjust. You communicate better. You become calmer. You lower your expectations without admitting that's what you're doing. You tell yourself loyalty means endurance. Loyalty means not giving up when things feel uneven. But slowly, the scale shifts. You gave understanding. They gave excuses. You gave reassurance. They gave distance. You gave consistency. They gave unpredictability. And because you are wired for depth, you rationalized it. You told yourself they just needed time. You told yourself love isn't always balanced. You told yourself your stability would eventually inspire theirs. Loyalty doesn't quit easily. That's the trap. The more you invest, the harder it becomes to admit the investment isn't mutual. Because if you admit that, You have to confront the possibility that you've been pouring into something that was never pouring back. And your mind resists that reality. It protects the narrative. It protects the hope, but reality doesn't disappear just because you reinterpret it. They liked your loyalty. They liked how safe it felt. They liked knowing you weren't going anywhere. They just didn't value it. There's a difference. They didn't care doesn't always mean cruelty. It doesn't always mean betrayal. Sometimes it means your presence was appreciated, but not essential. You were an option that felt good, not a priority that felt necessary. And that realization cuts deeper than anger ever could, because anger at least implies impact. Indifference implies replaceability. When you finally saw that clearly, without softening it, without rewriting it, something inside you stopped arguing. And that's when something in you went still. The real battle was never between you and them. It was between two versions of reality inside your own head. There was who you believed they were, their potential, their promises, the version of them that showed up in rare, perfect moments. And then there was who they consistently showed you through patterns, silence, and absence. You kept trying to merge those two images into one coherent truth. You edited memories, you emphasized their good days, you minimized the disappointments. Late at night, you replayed conversations, adjusting tone and context, searching for hidden meaning that would justify staying. You weren't naive, you were invested. That's what made it dangerous. Cognitive dissonance doesn't feel dramatic. It feels like tension you can't name. Evidence pulling one direction, hope pulling the other. And because you're loyal, you defaulted to hope. You told yourself growth takes time. You told yourself everyone deserves patience. But patience became permission. You weren't fighting them. You were fighting the truth. You were fighting the slow realization that the version of them you loved existed more in your interpretation than in their consistent behavior. And walking away from that meant grieving not just a person, but a future you had already imagined. Loyalty without awareness can turn into self-abandonment. You started silencing your intuition to preserve the connection. You ignored the tightness in your chest. You dismissed the subtle anxiety that showed up after every inconsistency. You stayed aligned with them, but you drifted away from yourself. That wasn't weakness, it was misplaced devotion. And misplaced devotion, once corrected, becomes dangerous. It wasn't the betrayal that broke something in you. It wasn't the argument. Not the harsh words, not even the distance. It was the silence afterward. It was realizing that when you pulled back, when you stopped initiating, stopped checking in, stopped carrying the emotional weight, the world didn't shake for them. Their routine continued. Their laughter didn't sound forced. Their days didn't seem heavier. Your absence didn't echo. That's what hurt. You expected resistance, a reach, a crack in their composure, something that proved you mattered at the level you felt. But there was no dramatic reaction, no desperate attempt to fix it. Just normalcy. They moved on normally. You recalibrated your entire nervous system. While they adjusted their schedule, you were rewiring your identity. You were questioning your judgment, your worth, your ability to read people. You were sitting with the kind of disappointment that doesn't explode, it sinks. The imbalance became undeniable. You were emotionally invested at a depth that altered you. They were involved at a level that accommodated them. You lost sleep, they lost convenience. You lost a vision of the future. They lost access, and in that contrast, something sobering settled in. It wasn't that they hated you. It wasn't that you were invisible. It was that you were optional. That's the quiet heartbreak no one prepares you for, because anger is easier to process. Betrayal at least confirms intensity. Indifference, though, it rewrites the meaning of everything. It forces you to accept that the weight you carried so seriously wasn't shared. Most people go back after this realization. You didn't. Even when it would have been easier to send the message, to reopen the door, to pretend the imbalance wasn't real. Something inside you refused, because something changed. You stopped chasing clarity from someone who was comfortable in confusion. You stopped asking for reassurance from someone who benefited from your uncertainty. You stopped explaining your value to someone who only noticed your absence when it was convenient. The sadness didn't disappear, but it sharpened into awareness. You finally saw the emotional math for what it was, and that's when loyalty turned into awareness. The change in you isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't post quotes. It doesn't demand acknowledgement. But it's there, and whether they admit it or not, they can feel something changing. You're quieter now, not distant, measured, not cold, controlled. You don't rush to fill silence anymore. You don't scramble to clarify every misunderstanding. When something feels off, you don't immediately volunteer reassurance just to stabilize the room. You watch. You listen. You let patterns reveal themselves without interfering. That alone unsettles people, because they were used to your emotional availability being constant. They were used to you smoothing tension, offering understanding, extending grace before it was earned. Your loyalty once moved quickly. It rushed to repair. Now it evaluates. You no longer over-explain. You no longer overextend. You no longer fight to be understood by someone committed to misunderstanding you. And the absence of that effort is noticeable. When loyalty withdraws without drama, it creates more tension than confrontation ever could. There's no argument to respond to, no accusation to defend against. Just a steady reduction of access. You still speak, you still show up, but not in the same way. There's a filter now. This version of you is harder to access. Conversations don't reach as deep unless they are earned. Your vulnerability isn't automatic. Your energy isn't freely distributed. You don't chase alignment. You observe consistency. And that's intentional, because you realized something powerful. Detachment isn't bitterness. It's calibration. It's what happens when awareness meets self-respect. You're not punishing anyone. You're adjusting your investment to match reality. That adjustment feels different. It feels grounded. You don't react the way you used to. You don't argue for your place. If someone drifts, you let them. If someone pulls away, you don't sprint after them. You've stopped forcing reciprocity. And in that restraint, something solid is forming. You're operating from somewhere deeper now. Not from emotion alone, but from discernment. They can feel it, because access to you is no longer assumed. It's considered. Loyalty didn't leave you, it evolved. You still believe in commitment. You still believe in depth. But now, your loyalty has standards. It's no longer handed out based on chemistry, words. It responds to patterns, to consistency, to alignment over time. You stopped investing in who someone could be. You started paying attention to who they repeatedly show themselves to be. That shift changed everything. Because emotional boundaries aren't ego. They're self-respect in practice. They're the quiet decision to no longer abandon yourself just to preserve a connection. They're the understanding that access to you is earned through stability, not sympathy. You're not testing people, you're observing them. You're operating from somewhere deeper now. Not from fear of losing someone, but from clarity about what it costs to keep the wrong person. The pain you went through trained you. It sharpened your perception. It taught you the difference between intensity and intention, between attention and investment, between someone enjoying your loyalty and someone reciprocating it. Betrayal didn't harden you, it refined you. You don't flinch at red flags anymore. You don't romanticize inconsistency. You don't confuse mixed signals with mystery. If something feels unstable, you don't try to stabilize it alone. That restraint is power. You don't love less. You choose slower. You let time reveal character. You let silence expose priorities. You let the lack of it speak without interruption. And if alignment fades, you don't negotiate your standards to keep it alive. That's not coldness, that's discipline. And discipline in loyalty creates something rare. Commitment that is calm, deliberate, and nearly unshakable. You're no longer desperate to connect. You're selective. And that selectiveness is shaping a future version of you that very few people will fully access. Months from now, you won't recognize the version of you who begged for clarity from someone committed to confusion. You'll be sharper, quieter, more deliberate with your energy. Not guarded in a fearful way, but structured. There will be a steadiness in your presence that doesn't waver when someone pulls away. A discipline in your emotions that doesn't spike at inconsistency. You'll be harder to read, harder to manipulate. Not because you're hiding, but because you're no longer leaking. This isn't emotional shutdown. This is emotional mastery. You'll still feel deeply. That will never leave you. But your feelings won't control your decisions. Your attachment won't override your standards. You won't confuse intensity with compatibility. You'll watch actions longer. You'll speak less. You'll move with intention instead of impulse. This isn't your final form. The sadness you felt was a stage, necessary, transformative. It stripped away illusion. It forced you to confront your own patterns. It made you sit with truths you tried to avoid. But awareness, that stays. Most people break here. They grow cynical. They close off. They pretend they never cared. Or worse, they run back to what hurt them. Because familiar pain feels safer than unfamiliar growth. You didn't, you built here. While others numbed themselves, you sharpened yourself. While others repeated cycles, you studied them. You let the disappointment mature into discernment instead of bitterness. That's rare, and rarity carries weight. The version of you that's emerging doesn't chase validation. It doesn't collapse under indifference. It doesn't confuse access with intimacy. It understands value, especially its own. And this next phase of you, it won't be louder, it will be undeniable. The saddest part wasn't that they didn't care. It's that you cared deeply for someone who was never capable of meeting you at that depth. That's a different kind of grief. It's not about rejection. It's about misalignment. You were offering something rare to someone who only knew how to hold something casual. You were speaking emotional fluency to someone still operating in fragments. And now you know the difference. You know what reciprocal effort feels like. You know what consistency sounds like. You know how your nervous system responds when something is stable versus when it's uncertain. That awareness changed you more than the loss ever could. You're no longer trying to prove your value to emotionally unavailable people. You're no longer overperforming just to secure reassurance. If someone can't meet you, you don't shrink to make it easier for them. You let them go. Not dramatically, not angrily. Decisively, that chapter didn't destroy your loyalty. It purified it. It removed desperation from devotion. It separated attachment from alignment. It showed you that depth is only powerful when it's shared. They didn't care used to sound like a wound. Now it sounds like clarity. And clarity doesn't beg. It chooses. It steps forward without noise. It moves with calm dominance. You don't hate them. Hatred would mean they still have access to your emotions. They don't. You don't chase them either. There's nothing left to prove. No final speech to deliver. No dramatic exit required. Silence says enough, and you don't need closure from them. Closure isn't something they give. It's something you claimed the moment you stopped lying to yourself. You became more precise, more selective with your time, more disciplined with your attachment, more aware of what alignment actually looks like. They didn't care. That sentence used to feel heavy. Now it feels clean. And now, neither do you. Not from bitterness. From understanding. You understand that depth is rare, that loyalty is powerful, that discernment is necessary. You were never too loyal. You were just early in your evolution.